Teens podcast. Y for Y is a group of teens that focus on the ways the community can help teens form positive relationships, fight misinformation about substance abuse, and improve mental health, while also empowering youth to take active steps towards advocating for their own needs.
Today we will begin a new Y for Y series all about relationships and boundaries. The next 4 episodes of our podcast will feature several guests from our team answering questions about forming connections with others and the importance of establishing clear boundaries with others. Today's episode is all about forming healthy relationships and understanding why strong relationships are important.
Okay, we have a bunch of guests today, so we're going to start with a little bit of an introduction. We're going to go through name and grade, and also, since it's National Ice Cream Month, tell everybody what your favorite ice cream flavor is.
All right, hi, I'm Zach. I'm going into senior year, and my favorite ice cream flavor is cookies and cream.
Hi, I'm Jonah. I'm a upcoming junior in high school, and my favorite ice cream flavor is chocolate.
Hi, I'm Rachel. I will be a senior, and my favorite ice cream flavor is vanilla.
Hi, I'm Wama. I will be a senior, and my favorite ice cream flavor, I'm a really big chocolate fan.
Hi, I'm Lila. I'm going to be a senior, and my favorite ice cream flavor is mint chocolate chip.
Hi, I'm Hunter. I'm going into my senior year, and my favorite ice cream flavor is probably Moose Tracks.
I'm Reese. I'm going to be a sophomore in high school, and my favorite ice cream flavor is cookie dough.
My name's Honora. I'm going to be a senior, probably cherry or orange sherbet.
Okay, and I'm Lydia. I am a rising senior, and my favorite ice cream flavor is also mint chocolate chip.
Okay, so we're going to ask questions, and we're going to talk about the questions, and just answer what you feel is right, okay? So, why is it important to have a platonic relationship?
I'll go first since we're thinking about it. I think platonic relationships helps us build pieces of ourselves in order to become better people, because human beings fundamentally kind of need to socialize or at least have some human connection. And when you have those platonic relationships, you get different pieces of other people to yourself, and you learn new things every day because those people are here around you as your community.
Yeah, there's a large learning aspect of it, like learning about different cultures, learning about different people's interests and how to accommodate for them as well.
And where does this importance come from? Why is it important for each one of us?
I mean, I feel like it can really help with mental health or anything like that, because then you have somebody that is always there. Again, it's platonic. It's constantly there. It's somebody that fully supports you and that you fully trust to help whenever you need it, and you can help them whenever they need it.
I think that human beings, introverted or extroverted, they don't really like to be alone. A lot of animals do grouping, and it helps protect other people, and I think in evolution that's helped so that we can survive. And I think more day-to-day life, it's also a survival thing.
Yeah, I agree. I think every relationship serves a different purpose, and from each person you meet, you can gain something. One of my favorite quotes is that for every person you meet, they're either there for a reason, a season, or a lifetime, kind of showing for if it's just for the memories, if it's something you're learning, there's always a benefit you can gain.
I also think it's important to have just mutual connection, especially in a world that relationships are often rather transactional. So one person gives another person something in favor of something. So it's very important to have relations which are mutually beneficial to both parties involved, and where you can understand someone precisely for who they are.
Yeah, I agree. I also think there's a quote that I really like, just about relationships in general, that's like, I think it's, a burden shared is a burden halved, and joy shared is joy doubled, which I really like. I think that's kind of sums it up pretty well.
Well, I also think, there's so many people in this world. There's, I think it's 8 billion. And I mean, it would be really hard not to have interactions with humans, like, and so I think it's beneficial to have good relationships with people instead of just like meh or bad relationships.
I know I was the one that asked the question, but I think it's very like natural for people to want to have like someone to go to and someone to like be there for them and not be alone, because having someone just to talk to and, you know, hang out with, it's like a life changer, honestly. Like if you don't have someone to hang out with, then like it's just a lot less bland. Like life is reliant on each other. We are reliant on each other, and we love each other.
Yeah, and connection and just the need to connect with other people is a very human trait. So it's so important to have that for anybody.
I mean, if we didn't have connections or anything of that sort, I think nothing would have happened in history. You know, those historic events root from people's connections and from friendships and from really anything imaginable. So I think it's necessary, it's vital to human nature to have platonic relationships.
I think some of the best inventions too, they came from collaboration, like the brothers who invented the airplane, you know, they collaborated.
Yeah. And so that kind of brings us to our next question. We like friends are important. And so a lot of like this is also pretty like relevant in everyday life, romantic relationships. And so why have a romantic relationship? Like, is it necessary? Why?
Also, to add into that question, like if you already have platonic relationships, like why have platonic relationships? Or I mean, like, why have a romantic relationship if you have platonic relationships?
I think that it's more in depth than a platonic relationship. I know with my friendships, it's like, oh, I could not talk to them for, I don't know, a year, and it would still be the same. But if I had a boyfriend or with my boyfriend and I just stopped talking to him, I feel like our connection wouldn't be the same as it is right now.
I feel like with love as well, it's more of a connection between two individuals' souls, which I think is necessary. Whereas with a platonic relationship, the connection, it isn't superficial by any means, but it's less deep. It's not able to go as far as a romantic relationship. And people need to have romantic relationships so that they can experience the world through the eyes of another completely.
Yeah, I mean, platonic relationships are amazing, but sometimes romantic relationships really do go to a deeper level and can have a different impact.
I also think, though, just to like add another voice into this, I feel like for me, I have never had a romantic relationship, but I have a lot of platonic relationships with people I've been friends with for years. And so just like, I feel like we know each other in a very deep way and a very intimate way that we don't need a romantic relationship. So sometimes I feel like a romantic relationship isn't always necessary to have a deep connection with a person.
I also haven't had a romantic relationship, and I just think from my point of view, I think the two types of relationships have a different type of like work ethic. Like you can work hard in both, but you work hard towards different directions. Being romantic with someone means that you're truly taking that time to build something with someone and understand with someone. And the same can happen with a platonic relationship, but you find that kind of ability to drift away or drift closer or just be able to build just small things. When you find romantic relationships often are those big steps, and I think it just takes a lot of work, and that's why we find platonic relationships much more just fundamental to human life, because you can build little houses anywhere you want to go and still have those like really intimate connections, but romantic work takes so much effort and so much time.
Yeah. And you also have to build yourself and change yourself for another person in certain ways to make them happy, and they have to do the same for you. And that's a large part of growth as a person, and especially when people break up because of these things that are flawed about each other, it's really important to change yourself, I guess. Is what I'm saying.
Yeah, kind of from the perspective of someone who strictly had platonic relationships and never even went out of my way for a romantic one, and now is in a very committed romantic relationship. I was really, kind of on edge to go into that, because just like Lydia mentioned, it's not necessarily like a necessity life. And I agree. I think friendships are necessary. Like you said, like Honora mentioned, there is 8 billion people here, and there's something we need to learn from all of each other. But I asked a friend, should I get into this relationship? Like, what is the purpose? And they told me, I think there's a lot of things that a romantic partner can support you with that that a friend can't. Like, you are more comfortable going to them, and with the complexity of trust issues and all of that, I think that is very beneficial. And I went into a lot of research, actually, and once I was in the relationship, I realized there's this aspect that isn't really necessary to human functioning, but truly, from someone who didn't believe in love before, there is a difference to loving a person. There's 3 parts to it. There's lust, which is the release of noradrenaline and dopamine. And then there's attraction, which releases dopamine, adrenaline, and pleasure. And then lastly, there's attachment, which I feel like is when you're fully in love, which is when oxytocin is released.
Yeah, also speaking as someone who's never had a romantic relationship, I think it's just important that they're both romantic and platonic relationships are important, but they're not one isn't better than the other. They're just important in different ways, and they affect different aspects of your life, and they have different connections and different meanings. So you can't say that one is better than the other. There's no way to kind of pit them against each other in that way as well.
So just to bring in another perspective, I'm queer, I'm part of the queer community, and there are a lot of people who aren't romantically attracted to anybody, that's called aromantic. And I personally have a loving relationship with another woman, and I think it's so interesting societies, especially Western societies, focus on romantic relationships. A lot of times I see people talking about it you're going to have one, your goal should be to have one long-term romantic relationship. And I think that's so interesting because that's kind of pictured as the goal, and we kind of forget, I feel that the importance of platonic relationships. I have tons of friends who, I have one friend, actually 2, but they're best friends, and they always talk, regardless of if we get into a romantic relationship, you're my highest priority, and my partner has to realize that. And I think that's important to I don't know, I think it's just so interesting.
From a more philosophical standpoint, I think all relationships happen to an individual or between 2 individuals for a reason, and sometimes those reasons are more short-lived than others. Sometimes it's to grow, sometimes it's to learn how to be accepting of someone for a long period of time. It can vary in infinite ways, and there's never a relationship that doesn't have purpose, and I think such is the case with love as well. It never can just be pointless or whatever. There's a very cohesive reason for why it occurs, and sometimes it'll be short-lived, sometimes it'll be long.
I think it's a lot of people's dream, not everybody's, but a lot of people that I know are oh my gosh, I want to be in a relationship. Why can't I be in a relationship? And I feel it also depends on how much you like yourself. If you don't like yourself very much, you're not going to really find relationships that will treat you well, and I've experienced this myself. And if you do have more self-love, I think it's easier to find a relationship where you feel more worthy, because you hold yourself at a higher standing.
Yeah, absolutely. Can I go back, like way back to what Jonah said? Do you think it's necessary, or do you think it's good to change yourself for another person?
I will speak on that. I think no, but I'm also just the type of person. I'm fine with change. Growth is like one of my main values, but like I think changing yourself for a person isn't the goal. It's just changing yourself around life, and when you end up being with that person, you end up changing yourself around how life is shaping you, because you're like, it's like if you're like two rocks that came together, you're gonna be shaped by like the waves of the world, everything that's going on, but like you're not being shaped by how that person is like bumping against you and work against you. You're shaping on how life is like facing you two as like one like single being. So I think like change happens like regardless, like no matter what, you meet anyone and you change, but I think that like you yourself should be the change, like the person that changes yourself, not that one person making those changes.
Yeah, I agree with that. I didn't mean change as in like personality wise or interest wise or what's important to you specifically. I meant like maybe being more reliable at times or being kinder to like a waiter or a random person.
Yeah, and I guess it can also depend on whether you're changing for another person or because of another person. You know, you can learn from somebody else and change because of them and grow versus changing yourself for them to fit their standards or something like that, you know. So I think changing for somebody versus changing because of somebody or just growing can be very different and can just really depend on the situation as well.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think that changing and improving are the same and could also be so different at the same time. Like if you're changing yourself to a lens of having that person like you more, then why are you changing yourself? Like there's no point in doing that, because that's not the reality. You're someone else, and so you want to change to improve. You don't want to change to be someone else. Like you eventually you might be very different than when you were 10 years ago, but that's because you've been improving, and I think that's the goal, not to change just for someone to like you.
Yeah, I think that you shouldn't change yourself for somebody else. You should change yourself because you want to. If you're trying to look different or act different so somebody will like you, I feel like then you're not being yourself, and you can't be yourself if you're trying to be something else or somebody else, and that's not very healthy.
And kind of going off of that, I think that, you know, kind of tying it back to the whole question of why have a romantic relationship is, you know, changing yourself for somebody versus because of somebody. A romantic relationship can be good because it can mean that you're fully accepted for the way you are and you don't have to change for somebody to like you. I think that's such an important piece, is that it can be a good thing.
Okay, so going back to the idea that relationships have a very strong influence on your identity, and kind of how your identity is always being shaped and reshaped by these strong connections, how can you form a strong connection like this with new people?
Okay, I can go first. I've done a lot of connecting with people because like you spend time with them, and that's like my main thing. You spend time with people a lot. It's either like in the classroom or outside the classroom, at work, at whatever club you go to. You spend that time with people, and you get to like honestly like know them. Like you don't have to like immediately ask all the questions and be like, let's be deep immediately, but like you take that time to just know them through those little moments, those little details, and then time slowly like gets you together. Like me and my best friend, I don't think we were best friends freshman year, but we spent time in a dorm together, and once you get to know someone a lot and you also go to theater together and you realize like, oh, this person gets me, you start connecting and growing those like bonds, and then you realize, oh, time has grown us, made us grow up, but also grow a relationship at the same time.
I think that you should ask a lot of questions. Although, to be fair, my mom says sometimes talking to me sounds like you're getting interrogated. So, I don't know, maybe not. But that's always how I connect with people, is by asking a lot of questions. You don't have to ask like really deep questions, but people really like talking about themselves.
Yeah.
Kind of along those same lines, I think we hear this a lot, but listening to actually listen to somebody versus listening to respond and talk it can be very different. You know, I think you can have so much better of a conversation and then, you know, eventually a connection if you are listening to somebody just to be able to listen and hear what they have to say versus listening to respond yourself and talk yourself. So I think that can be a really big piece of it, I guess.
Yeah, and it's also very important to ask questions that you're actually curious about with the person, which makes it easier to listen and makes the conversation more engaging because, like, if they have a certain hobby or interest that you share, it can really lead to a more strong relationship, I guess.
I also think for me, when like meeting new people, yeah, particularly when it comes to asking questions and like being willing to share things about yourself, I also think it's good to, I think for me, it's important to show people early on that they're okay. I'm comfortable with them being like silly and authentic around me. Like one icebreaker question I'll ask anyone I've ever met is, would you rather have toes on your elbows or fingers on your knees? And I think it allows for a conversation to begin and also lets them know that I like to be not serious. So
I think getting to know anybody really helps with a strong relationship. And I mean, interrogating them works. Really just getting to know them and coming out of your shell and letting them come out of their shell too. I think it helps so that you can see each other for how you are, and then that's how you can interact in the future more comfortably. And I think that makes it stronger.
I think that after meeting someone, being able to like ask them questions, respond meaningfully, and then when you meet with them again, if you want to form a relationship with them, to hang out with them and with like regard to what questions you've asked, like, hey, what do you like to do? What are your hobbies? Like Jonas said, and just, you know, get to know them, and then later ask if you want to hang out with them with things that they like, and maybe eventually you'll be able to do things that, like, you know, you guys explore things that you might not have explored before, and kind of just form a relationship from there. I do agree that it kind of comes down to being able to ask questions meaningfully and respond meaningfully and be honest.
I also think the ability or the confidence to be vulnerable, or at least the willingness to be vulnerable, because it takes a lot of vulnerability, and that's a very strong thing for you to, you know, completely just kind of give a part of yourself to another person who is a stranger. And I think that can be, that can lead to more strong connections.
Yeah, kind of going on the opposite perspective of that, it's definitely like being that person someone can come to, being that place someone can be vulnerable with. And kind of like Lydia was saying in the introduction part, I've always heard to like act like you're someone's best friend. But I think the first step to that truly is being open to that connection and treating everyone with dignity, having the same like care and compassion, and just like honestly in your truth being like, I know this is an amazing person and there's something this connection will benefit for me.
I kind of have a story that has to do with like this whole like conversation and all that stuff. A guy came to our school and he had a book about like the art of conversation, and he was like, I like ask you as students and also as like faculty to examine how like you conversate with someone. And he's like basically said all the points you guys have said, like listening to someone, but also allowing yourself to be put into that conversation, but also allowing for those moments of like pausing and thinking and just allowing yourself to absorb it. And after that like talk to us, which because all the kids obviously don't absorb any of that information after he talks to us, our school made us sit down with different kids from around our school in our same grade, but like different barracks, different dorms, different sports, different activities, and you had to sit down and talk to that person for like 45 minutes within that group and really get to know them. And like that moment of like having that conversation, it probably bonded me to a few of the people in that group, because even though I had rarely talked to them, like maybe I passed by them or I had a class freshman year with them, We really sat down and just looked at those questions, and they were about family, they were about like our feelings, and then you got to know them. And some of those people I still say hi to, I pass by, I have another conversation with them, because that moment where we had to sit down and actually like conversate and take those pauses and look at each other in the eye and go, okay, we're two human beings in a room, what are we going to do about it, really helped us understand like we can be two people from different opposite lives, but like we still know each other's like different things about each other because we had that conversation.
And I do want to provide like another perspective that there is so much more to it than just the conversations. You know, I think conversations are obviously so important, but speaking as somebody where one of my closest friends is nonverbal, there's more to it than that. You know, I think it's just kind of like Lydia was saying earlier, it's just about being vulnerable and showing that person that they can be themselves around you and you're not judging them, you're loving them more for it. And I think that's such a big key point. You know, I can be myself around her, she can be herself around me, and we don't have to have that conversation. You know, it's not something that we can do is have, you know, a speaking conversation, but I'm still so connected to her in that same way.
I think additionally, like, there's so many times where I'm like, oh, I want to have a deep connection with this person. And like, I don't think you can force connection. Like, there are the number of friendships that I've, like, deep friendships that I've had, like, none of them I've gone in going thinking that I'm going to have a deep friendship. Actually, my girlfriend, when I first met her, I was very intimidated by her. I did not think, my school's very Christian and small and conservative, and as a queer person, it's very difficult to build authentic relationships with people. So I did not think that we would get along, and I was like, oh, this is not going to work. But one day I just said, you know what? I'm going to compliment her on her pants, and I did. And then I realized she's actually a big goofball. So
I think to Hanora's point, you kind of, and this is just general pertaining to life, I think you kind of just have to let things happen. And if someone comes into your life and you appreciate them for who they are, you just have to let them be there because they're there in your life for a very good reason. And if you neglect that, then you risk losing something that could otherwise be very, very beneficial, not only to you, but to the other person and whomever else may be in their life.
Yeah, and to that, like, don't be afraid. As hard as it is, like, trust me, it is hard to not be afraid to talk to new people or talk to people that you want to hang out with. But as a general piece of advice, don't be afraid. Just acknowledge the fact that you can talk to them and you can try to form that relationship and you can do the best that you can. And asking those questions and hanging out with them is what you can do, and not doing that won't form a relationship with that person. So it's better to go in and risk it all than to not at all, you know?
I think Rachel made a really good point about like how conversation can't be the whole fundamental like foundation of a relationship. I just think I found like throughout my life, I found action is actually like our most powerful like tool, because I've seen so many different types of relationships grow. I've seen between like a freshman and senior because they've bonded through leadership. I've seen between teammates who do opposing things on the team but they understand each other's role. I've seen people who are in classrooms who've never had that moment to like know each other until that moment, and it's all because of their actions, that leadership. They went out and did things to each other. The actions of doing sports where they saw each other act and actually like help out the team or help out or add points to our like winning. And I've also seen that through those like small classroom friendships of helping out with like a math problem or handing out like a pencil. And those small moments of actions, I think that like imprints on human beings a lot more than sometimes conversation, because you have like a bunch of conversations in a day, but one person's action can like really shift how you see the world and shift how you see them, and that adds that little bond that you've started to grow.
And I feel like that's a very almost liberating thing, and a very beautiful thing that just happens in life all the time. And there, obviously there are times when that leads to something more, like a deeper connection, but sometimes I think it just happens just to remind you that, like, humanity is inherently like a benevolent thing. And, like, if you're at the store or something and you drop something and someone picks it up for you, just simple things like that. I don't know. I just think that's very, very important.
And it just kind of makes me think, one of my like all-time favorite quotes is, you might forget what somebody said and you might forget what they did, but you will not forget how they made you feel. And I think that's, I don't know, I love it a lot. And it just kind of shows that, if you make someone feel welcomed, or if you made them feel not welcome, they're going to remember that. They might not necessarily remember what it was you said, but how you made them feel can really be the grounds for that connection, or whether that connection happens or if it doesn't.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, just like Hunter said, there is that connection. There's always that potential for connection that you really need to harness and take advantage of. And it adds those benefits to people's lives. Even if it's something small in a grocery store, it can brighten someone's day. And I often overwhelm myself almost with the fact that I'm like, every person I meet in this school, I go to a school with 500 kids per grade. I want to be friends with all of them, but at a point I'm spreading myself too thin and I'm not being a good friend to all of those people. And that kind of led me to a fault. So that leads me to wonder, what can having a healthy relationship, one where you're, not spreading yourself too thin, how can that improve your mental health?
I think that having a healthy relationship can help you in many ways, and especially like I'm gonna use the like difference between having a healthy relationship, like one really good friendship versus like 10 loose friendships. I feel like for me, I've always been close to one person since second grade, and I like there's this point where you stop becoming friends, and his name is Zach, and honestly, like, I wouldn't call him a friend as much as I would call him a brother at this point. Like, the amount of times we get frustrated with each other, like, it's not friendship anymore. Like, we are stuck together. And I think that having that healthy relationship with him has been mutually beneficial to both of us. We've always been there for each other, and we will always be there for each other. And I think that is the point of having a healthy relationship. While having 10 relationships, like Reese said, you're spreading yourself thin. And spreading yourself thin means that you're not going to be able to have that like quality time with each and every one of them, because time is so limited. And you won't be able to form that structure in that relationship. Like, I love the analogy of relationships being bridges, and it's very expensive to create 10 bridges with quality. I mean, you can do it, but every time you add a friend, the meaning of each friend is going to thin itself out. And I'm not saying you should lower the amount of friends you have. I'm just saying you should stick to these. I mean, like, don't try to spread yourself too thin is basically what I'm saying. You can have lots of friends. Like, I would say for me, I have a lot of friends, but I would say about 3 to 6 of them, I would say like 6 of them, I'm always talking to. Like, I'm with them always. And I don't think that like I can do much more than that, because it just stresses myself out. And so I wouldn't say don't try and be there for people, but the more you have, like the more friends you have, the more stressful you're going to be.
I found myself to be a person who like wants to befriend people and also different like aspects of life, because I find it really important. But I have those main core friends that really like build me up, and I find like friendships are meant to build you up but also let you collapse. Because like, for example, I have like 2 people that I can think of, like, that go to my school or went to my school who I really like depended on, especially this past year. And both of them have like quotes in my quote book, for example, because like, and those are like big important quotes, like not like those funny ones, like those ones that like actually like shook my earth, because I found out I can like depend on them truly, especially as someone who has had to be a leader, has had to be an older sister, has had to be someone who constantly needs to be working hard academically, but also socially and sports wise. Those people have allowed me to collapse. And like, for example, my best friend in the whole world, I can be like the most silly person, because people can think I'm really like intimidating or really quiet, or I have like, and you might not think that because you can see me in this space, but like in academic spaces or in sports wise, I can be very like serious and very quiet. But my best friend allows me to just say those goofy questions, question myself, allows me to just break down. She allows me to just say something, and she can like scold me about it, but I know like she's the best person I can come to for that, because she's seen all those sides of me rather than just seeing me as someone who's quiet or nice in a social situation.
So I mean, I've struggled a lot to have healthy relationships, just either because the relationships I have had are not healthy, or I just haven't had those relationships. And I think from my experience, having healthy relationships, because I'm introverted and I do enjoy my alone time. I like spending time by myself. But having those relationships allows me to get outside of my head. Like, it allows me to bring ideas and then have people to like bounce them off of and see a different perspective. And I think whenever I've had unhealthy relationships, it's always made me question myself. It's always been like, oh, am I doing something wrong? Is this my fault? And I think forming those healthy relationships has like allowed me to believe in myself and realize, oh, I can do this. I can have meaningful, healthy relationships. I don't always have to be alone. And I think that's just really important to me.
I think it's very important to realize that no relationship is going to be the same. And some people are closer to you, some people are not. And if somebody doesn't respect your boundary, or you can't create a boundary with them, then maybe they're not worth being your friend, because somebody who should respect you affects your mental health in a positive way. And if you're getting disrespected, or somebody's talking behind your back, or you're like, hey, I don't like when you do this, can you please stop? And they keep doing it over and over again, that's not going to have a good impact on you. So I think looking at your friends and choosing them wisely is a good idea.
Yeah, I agree. And I think going back to the idea that not all relationships have to be the same, I think that all kinds of relationships can improve your mental health. Like, sometimes my spirits are lifted by the people I know I'm going to get to wave to on the way to my next class. Some of my best memories have been like just little passing comments from complete strangers. But I also think, going back to what Honora said about getting you out of your own head, I think that's so important sometimes. I think a good friend can kind of distract you from your own self-destructive thoughts. Like, I know for me, there was one time last year where my school was doing a production of a musical. I was the lead and I was super, super stressed about it. And I just had one day where I just was really, really down on myself and was completely prepared to go home and cry. And my friend, who's one of my closest friends who I've known since kindergarten, she stopped me in the hallway and she said, by the way, I'm so jealous of your vibrato. Vibrato. She was like, but anyways, however you say it, she was like, your vibrato sounded so good today. And that like little comment, that little tiny moment of her pulling me out of my own head boosted my mood for the rest of the day. And I didn't cry when I got home, but I was very thankful to her. And I think that's super important.
And I think those types of like interactions also can go to a more wider scoped and even a less small level, as much as they can be on a small level. So some of my friends kind of have very conflicting ideologies on life and philosophy than myself, but sometimes I feel like, I don't know, it's just if you have a discussion of some sort with them and you can both like understand or at least sympathize with what each other have to say, even though you don't agree, because you know each other as close friends. And, you know, I think that kind of creates something for both of the people in the relationship, making it easier to be very vulnerable and be more willing to be themselves in situations outside of that relationship as well. Just a growth in general.
Yeah, and I agree. And back to my like bridge analogy, I feel like Nwanma said this, and I do agree. There are going to be ups and downs in practically every relationship, and with that said, I feel like bridges in the real world will fall, collapse all the time, and they'll be rebuilt. And when they're rebuilt, they will usually analyze what went wrong with the bridge. Why did it collapse? Was it too old? What happened? And similar to friendships, you need to be like, when those ups and downs happen, a bridge might collapse, but you need to be willing to rebuild that bridge and build it better. And that's what's going to happen with friendships, is they're going to get stronger when they get weaker, if that makes sense. And sometimes sometimes they don't work out in the end, which sucks. But when they fall, it's both of your jobs to be able to build that back up stronger.
I think that's the element of like healthy that we always have to think about, where you are building this like ecosystem within yourself and also this person, where like you feed it different things, you feed yourself different thoughts, different ideas, and you're building that bridge, you're building that way in that ecosystem. But you also just have to remember, like, healthy can apply in different ways, not just your mind. I mean, although your mind is like one of the most important things, as it affects your whole body, but when you see that person, do you get a certain feeling in your own stomach, because that gut feeling that you get. And I think that's like the healthy part we should think about more of, like, your body is also like your most important tool, where you're telling yourself, oh, I feel this certain way, I think this certain way the moment I see this person, and you're building that bridge. But you have to think about those like really healthy elements. That's what, like, a relationship can be conversation, a relationship can be like collapsing, a relationship can be like talking about those different beliefs, but it can also just be like, how do I truly like feel about this person within yourself.
Yeah, and to kind of move on, like, how do you start these bridges? How do you start a healthy, strong bridge? I know a lot of people struggle making good friendships over lots of friendships. Like, I know someone who is really good at like just making friends, but I know that she doesn't have like any like strong friendships. And so how do you form those strong friendships?
Taking the bridge analogy here, I think it's kind of hard because you don't know where the path is going to take you. You don't know, like, if the bridge is going to be sturdy, if it's going to be strong. So it's definitely all risk taking. But kind of what I think our group kind of came to a consensus to is the differentiation between, like, I am like mentally calm with this person, they benefit me, and I, the opposite. I think personally I overthink a lot, and in past relationships, though I don't regret them, there was a lot I gained from them. It was a lot more second guessing, a lot more judgment, and even if it wasn't real, I wasn't comfortable. But I took a risk, I put myself out there, I met more people, even though it maybe could have ended up the same way in hurting myself. And I found people where now I don't second guess at all. I go to hang out, I have fun, I'm not overthinking every action I did. And I truly think that is a healthy relationship. It's just taking those risks.
I think it's super important to see how the person is treating you and look at it from a different perspective. Like, if I'm not happy, why am I being friends with this person? Or if they're talking shit about me, sorry, why am I friends with this person? And I think it's really important to set boundaries, like I was saying before, and just view, like, if I'm not making this person happy, why am I friends with them? If they're not making me happy, why am I friends with them?
For me, I think it's having a strong relationship is like so much built on like communication. And I'm not, like Rachel said, communication can come in like, it does not need to be verbal. It can come in so many different ways. But I think having the ability to talk about when, oh, this is a hard thing, this is a struggle, this thing that you said upset me, and having that communication, that conversation. And I think part of, like, and it goes both ways, having the other person be able to say, I don't feel comfortable with this. I don't, like, for me, when somebody tells me, when one of my friends says, hey, what you just did made me really uncomfortable, that actually is like kind of like takes away some of my anxiety, because I really, like, when I love my friends, I really love them and I want them to be comfortable. And if I feel like, because I tell my friends all the time, like, if I make you uncomfortable in any way, just please tell me. And I think societally we are told, like, don't tell our friends this, like, you don't want to be a burden on someone, don't, like, if you're uncomfortable, just like hide it. So when my friends say, hey, this made me uncomfortable, it kind of makes me go, okay, they trust me, they feel comfortable with me, and able to like bring up when I have broken their boundaries. And I really appreciate that. And additionally, when I come to another person with, hey, you really hurt me when you said this, or you made me uncomfortable, and they can forgive me, or sorry, not forgive me, but like they can apologize, they can take accountability, that's when I know I have like a healthy, strong relationship. Because there's so many times in the past where I've been like, hey, this thing you did made me uncomfortable, and they're like, oh, I'm sorry for how you feel like that, that's how you feel. And while that sounds like an apology, it's not them taking accountability for the actions. And I think that's just so important for me to be like, have somebody who can take accountability and also put accountability on me, because yeah.
I think it's go ahead.
I think it's a lot about just kind of going into it with an open mind and an open heart. You know, you're not, every relationship is different, you know. It's not like anybody goes into it knowing exactly how to play it out or how it's going to work out, you know. You just have to kind of go into it and be yourself. And if it doesn't work out, it doesn't work out, you know. You can find something that works for you. You just have to find your people.
And exactly to the same point, I think the mark of a strong relationship is when the people involved are willing to permit compromise and a certain degree of formlessness. So if something comes up, you're willing to compromise, you're willing to solve it, you're willing to improve, not just to your own benefit, but to the benefit of the other, which is also kind of to Hanora's point, to give the other person the comfort, or I don't really know what the word is, just the comfort of knowing they have another person into whom they can put whatever they might need to put, and just to be willing to accept whatever that might be.
And there's definitely components to like building a healthy relationship also. I feel like a couple of those would be honesty, accountability, and I don't know, commitment, and there's definitely others, and it shifts per person, but I feel like there's these things that every relationship is going to need one way or another. Like, you can't form a healthy relationship with everyone just lying. Like, that just can't work out that way. And honesty, like, and these things are hard also. Like, I'm not going to say that all of these things are easy. But like, to build a healthy relationship, you need to be like, remind yourself of your values, the other person's values, and kind of just straight moralities, right? So I feel like, yeah, there's just these components to a healthy relationship, and like my bridge, that there's components to the bridge that need to be kept for that relationship to stay put, you know?
I think if you're looking at a relationship, it goes both ways. Like, if you're thinking about the bridge, though, you can go on both sides. If you're thinking about a sidewalk, you can go on both sides. A swing, even, you can go both sides. And if one person's putting in all the work, it's not healthy, because they're providing, and they're giving everything, and then they aren't receiving anything either. And I think that's unhealthy.
There's a thing that Aristotle said. It has nothing to do inherently with friendships or anything, but he was talking about grammar in it, and it's the idea that all mental experiences are the same, but all words are not the same and are not expressed the same, and all written words are also not expressed the same. So I think it's the same way with the bridge analogy, because there needs to be fundamental components to make that bridge work, which would serve as the mental experiences, and the relationships themselves are each and all inherently different. So I think, yeah.
Good example.
I love the bridge analogy. I also think that, like, building a relationship where you're not being willing to be completely honest with each other is like building a bridge with missing bricks. Like, if you're building up a relationship and it's built on a foundation of a little bit of resentment, you're just kind of waiting for your bridge to fall. Like, honesty and clarity and communication are so important to me. I have a friend who, one of the first times I met her, she told me very clearly, she said, because she's very extroverted and I'm much more introverted than her. And one of the first times we ever hung out, she told me, she said, if you ever don't want to hang out with me, don't like make an excuse. Just tell me that you're not feeling up to hanging out with me. And I think that's a good rule to live by in relationships. Just be honest, because otherwise you're building up resentment and you're waiting for the bridge to fall.
Yeah, this is gonna sound really sad, but there were like two moments where I had like two relationships and both friendships like crumble. And those were like really important to me, but they went out with like communication, although like it like sent like shock waves. Like, the first one, it was my fault, and then the other one was like her fault. And that first one is, I was so grateful for her communication, even though like at the end of the day I was devastated. I was like horrified by what I had done, or like horrified that like I had to make her feel that way. But like, she communicated those feelings, she expressed those feelings, and I was like, we have been best friends since second grade, but I understand that like we gotta end it, or we gotta like pack things up, because you communicated those feelings to me. And then the second one, I was like, I'm not gonna sit here and spend like the rest of the time like holding back and being afraid to speak out because you have a temper. So I decided honesty is the best way, and it both hurt really badly. But then I realized like those are my friendships, and even though like they both went out, we had to communicate because we still understood each other on like that fundamental. We got to know each other. We spent so much time with each other that it would be like almost disrespectful, almost inhuman to just like push away, turn away, or hurt them because I wanted something to get out of it. No, I just thought we had to communicate. We have to be honest. We have to take each other's feelings into perspective, because we know each other. We got to know each other. We have to care for each other, even if we want to separate.
Going back to what Lila said, I you know, she said that like it goes both ways and both people have to put in the effort. And I agree with that so much. And but I also think that there's such a like, when people think that both people have to put in the effort, a lot of times I think there's this assumption that it's always has to be 50-50. And I don't think that's true. Like, I think over like the grand scheme of your relationship, you should be like, both people should be putting in 50-50. But I think in the moments, sometimes you can't do that. Sometimes it's going to be 70-30 or 20-80. And I think that's like, I mean, everybody has their weaknesses and everybody has their struggles. And I think that's kind of the beauty of a friendship. I think earlier Hunter said something that like really stuck out to me. Like your bridge you can go through hardships. Your bridge will weaken, but you can build it up stronger. And I think that really stuck out to me because, yeah, like some of my strongest friendships, like we've had the disagreements, we've had the arguments, and I think it's just like I know I can trust in those people because I know that they're committed enough to our relationship that they're going to put in the effort to build it back up because they already have. And I think that's so great. Also, sorry, but going back to what Lydia was saying about, communication and honesty, I've had a lot of friendships where, people just haven't like they've thought the best way to get through something is just to ice me out. And that is it's been so harmful. Like, even when it's my fault, like icing somebody out, it's made all my other relationships so much more painful.
Yeah, I have been through a decent amount of friendship breakups, and that's definitely something that has always frustrated me, just kind of the level of immaturity different people deal with it with. And all of them hurt, like was discussed before. All of them were bad, and even as it changed, like none of it was one person's fault. It was just the relationship, the connection wasn't the same anymore. The reason season lifetime, that was just a season and it's over. But even I think with age, because like these fallouts I've had like 4 or 5 started in like 4th grade. Obviously, we're so immature, didn't deal with that well. And now I've learned from my experiences and I can, be able to see like how the bridge can be rebuilt. And maybe it looks differently now. And maybe it's, not a bridge I use as much, but it doesn't need to completely collapse. So I think that's something you do have to learn through experience, but it felt really like off to me that it's not taken with the same like seriousness that romantic relationships are, because it is just as painful and it is, just as impactful on your day-to-day life, but people don't have the like decency, I feel like, to just tell you. Like they think they can just ignore you, and honestly, it is a breakup in my mind. It is a loss of a deep connection like that.
Yeah, I agree. Simply have a mutual respect for each other. If you don't have a mutual respect for each other, what's the point?
I think that everybody has a different idea of a relationship, and if somebody doesn't see eye to eye with your idea of it, I think communication is really key. Or if they're like, I don't want to hang out with you, they should really tell each other that.
All right, so I think we're coming to a close. Does anybody have any last thoughts? No. All right, well, thank you all for joining us. Stay tuned for our next episode where we will discuss like what defines a good friendship. Okay, it's time to duck out.
Wah.